good to be the king. So, continuing to catch up on the Monsterverse, and have now seen Godzilla, King of the Monsters. And, it's pretty good. I think it's definitely better than I think it was 2014 Godzilla. It's a lot more fun, and there's a lot more monster action in it, and spread out really well. They actually did a pretty good job at not letting it go too long without giving us not only a monster, but usually at least two monsters going head to head with each other. And that's what we're here for. Now, that can't be the whole movie because, well, then it just gets boring and it loses what makes it special. So we do have the human story, and the human story is okay. It's decent. I mean, it's one of the things that's frustrating about Godzilla and giant monster movies in general. You do need the human story there because, like I said, it can't be nothing but the monsters, because then you're only doing the movie at one level and you're not having the dips and valleys and the correct flow to be able to enjoy the thing and have things feel momentous if it's all just the high points all the way through. So they do need to be there, but they're never what you come away remembering. So it can be tricky to balance that. For my part, I find usually the best thing to do is to have it not depend heavily on the audience's attachments to these specific characters. Very rarely has that ever actually worked, especially in Godzilla movies, at least in my experience. So it's usually better to have something, I don't want to say light and imply it should be goofy and wacky, but it's best not to proceed as if the audience is as invested in the people as they are on the monsters. And I think they kind of ended up doing that here a little bit. Although that might be, to a certain extent, a symptom of just how dour and serious this whole thing is. Even though overall it is more fun than the previous one, it shares that film's sense of portentousness, and its sort of over severity. So if you were to ask me, hey, would you rather rewatch Kong Skull Island or Godzilla King of the Monsters, I'm probably going to say Kong Skull Island, not because it's necessarily better, I'm not sure it is, they're probably on about equal footing, but because it doesn't feel like it's trying to be this massive, important series. Kong Skull Island seemed to recognize, at least to a certain extent, that it is ridiculous, and it didn't try to make me take everything so seriously. And again, that's not to say it should be treated jokey. Kong Skull Island didn't treat it jokey, but it treated it lightly enough that you could just kick back and go, oh man, this is nuts, and not have this, these dark colors and this desaturated palette and this massive overbearing orchestra booming at you. This is important. I'm like, just let me have fun. And again, while more fun than the previous Godzilla film, not as fun as Kong Skull Island. So I am definitely going to hope in Godzilla vs. Kong that they will find that balance. I am going to be a little bit curious actually to see how they handle who we're supposed to be rooting for. Because by the end of this movie, and also Kong Skull Island, they've kind of set up both Godzilla and Kong as, by and large, benevolent, positive forces. So if you're going to have them fight each other, unless it is going to do sort of the classic Marvel two heroes meet for the first time and fight each other thing, which is they fight each other and then eventually join forces to take on something even bigger. Unless they do that, I'm going to be really curious, and that would be kind of the lazy thing to do if I'm being completely honest, which is kind of why I'm expecting it to be what happens. But if they don't do that, I will be curious to see how they sort of parse who audiences should be rooting for over the course of this thing. But, that's me kind of kicking the can down the street and focusing on the movie I'm building up to and a little bit less on this. Because, like I said, I enjoyed it, but I wished I had liked it more. I wished not so much of it had been in the dark. And that's not just an aesthetic thing. The tone of the thing is very dark, which, unless you're... It's a little bit of a clash because unless you are doing Godzilla as a more monster, horrifying story like the original Gojira, or even something like Shin Godzilla that gets very dark at times, then I would rather have a little bit of a lighter visual palette. And even Shin Godzilla was not in the dark the way this thing is in the dark. I wished more of these battles had been in sunlight, for one thing. Although, again, I do recognize from a practical standpoint, part of that is to cover the seams of the effects, because if it's darker and there's a lot of effects and there's a lot of clouds or what have you, it's easier to render and get everything together. Like, I do understand that. It's just, given how nicely lit, especially the final battle in Kong Skull Island was, and how good that looked, this is a little bit... And I felt very weird about how they handled Ken Watanabe's character, who's what I think might even be the only returning character from the previous Godzilla movie. I felt very weird about his entire handling because, so, they keep, characters talk up, what him leading them and being inspiring and being brilliant, but he doesn't, none of that's in evidence, because he almost every time there's a major decision, he turns to or defaults to our white lead hero. And every time he has a suggestion that contradicts what Ken Watanabe's character was going to do, just says, oh, we'll do what he does. So he's not the figure everyone's talking him up to be. And there's also something, I can't quite fully parse if this odd feeling I have about this is justified, but I'm just going to lay it out there. Something feels weird to me about the only prominent Japanese character in a film whose origins date back to a Japanese film about the fear and the dread and the lasting damage of nuclear weapons. To have the only Japanese character or prominent Japanese character in this film detonate a nuclear bomb so he supercharges Godzilla. In other words, thank God we have nuclear weapons. They sure did save the day. Something about that feels, it makes me queasy in a way that I'm not, like I said, I'm not particularly fully equipped to parse, I don't think, but like, no, something's off about that. So that was a bit of annoyance. The other monsters are nicely varied. They're very nicely realized. Ghidorah, Rodan, Mothra. I mean, look, here's one thing that I will absolutely give Gareth Edwards. I think I got it right this time. I've messed up his last name before because I don't know that many Gareths, and I've confused him with others before. Gareth Edwards, pretty sure. He is very good at communicating scale and making things that are supposed to be big feel big, which is a lot harder than you would think. You want a crash course on how to not pull that off, you can honestly watch Michael Bay's Transformers movies. These things are supposed to be huge, but they never really feel that big. There's a very fine tuning about the way and the weight and the speed at which these things move to really communicate how massive they are. Yeah, he knows how to do it. And he does it very, very well with all of the monsters in question. I kind of ragged on the human element of the story. I don't want to completely knock that. There were elements I liked. I mean, I just kind of liked seeing Bradley Whitford rattle off monster jargon. Like, that just tickled me for some reason. I don't know. For some reason, I could almost picture him delivering more or less the same lines of The West Wing if President Bartlett had to deal with Godzilla. So like they got a good cast in terms of delivering all this stuff. Putting the family as the core thing, again, it's not a bad idea, but I think the movie feels like it believes you're going to be more invested, I think just because there's a kid. And to her credit, Millie Bobby Brown is not an annoying child, which, oh boy, do they usually tend to be in these sorts of things. But she wasn't, so she's not a detriment. I'm just not sure that added a whole bunch. And the final post-credit scene was weird because it's got Charles Dance coming into possession of one of the heads of Ghidorah, implying that he's, going to do something like resurrect Ghidorah or whatever. But except, unless he was lying about his motivations, he got what he wanted. Because his agenda was the same as the mother. I can't remember these characters' names. So they had the same agenda, which was to release the Titans to basically balance the Earth again. And it's very evident that once Godzilla kills Ghidorah, and we go through, the stuff that happens during the credits and the headlines or whatever, that has clearly happened. So he won. He got what he wanted. Bringing Ghidorah back again is contradictory to what it's been demonstrated across the movie that he wanted. So the only way that works is if he actually wanted something else. But then, I'm sorry, that just makes him an idiot. Because I can't imagine, unless he is just like a flat-out doomsday cultist, I can't think of what motivation he could have to justify what he's doing, other than the one that's stated in the film, to release the Titans and have them rebalance the Earth. And that happens, and I'm spending way more time on this than it's worth, considering it's like the very end post-credits scene, but like, this is what you're hinging intrigue for future entries on, and I'm immediately going, wait a minute. Charles Dance is a good presence. He's solid. Again, it's well cast. I know talking about it, I come across more down on it than I think I actually was. I did enjoy it, but especially coming immediately off the back of Kong Skull Island, just having it be visually darker, have the tone be so much more serious, and lacking that sense of fun to anywhere near the same level, I was a little let down by that. And maybe that's unfair. Because, while they clearly exist in the same universe and they're about to fight each other, the films tonally are not trying to be the same thing. But I think it just demonstrates my preference to have something a little lighter, a little brighter, a little sillier. Because that's just going to make me smile. And Kong Skull Island made me smile a lot more than Godzilla King of the Monsters did. Although I have my notes on that too. There's that review if you haven't seen it. I had some pretty specific on that too. So, whatever. Godzilla King of the Monsters. You've seen it. What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Like, share, subscribe. I have a Patreon. Maybe there'll be a link up there. If there isn't, because YouTube is stupid and broken, then the link is down in the description. Any amount you are able to contribute is of great assistance. This is, in fact, my living. This is how I pay my bills and feed my kid. But even if you're not able to do that, the stuff I mentioned already, like, share, subscribe, all helps me out, but no pressure. Take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break.